Let's see here. I'm gonna get started. Hey, it looks like it's working. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll get started in just a minute. Well, welcome everybody to this. I just want to make sure that I've got my YouTube and hi. Oh, it says I'm not getting a good smooth stream. Is this working? Great. Well, I'm going to go over, I've been making maps using Illustrator and Mapublisher for quite a while, and if this stream isn't working, please let me know because I'm getting errors from YouTube. And not sure why. Okay, but so I've been using Illustrator with Mapublisher, and I'm going to go over kind of my workflow with Illustrator and Mapublisher, and then I want to talk about using QGIS because that's become a bigger part. I'm going to try to turn off the echo. A bit echoey. Is there a way to deal with the echo? Hold on just a second. I hope the echo doesn't continue too much. Before I get going, really, I want to change the stream settings and make sure I've got this. It says not stream health poor. Okay, I'm going to try this again. So I'm not sure why my stream status is so poor, but it says issues need attention. I'm going to try one more thing before I continue. Properties. Sorry. Well, I hope that this isn't too bad of an experience. Okay. I'm looking at Affinity Designer, and I'm going to be working on, I went to the park on Saturday, and I didn't know how long this loop was going to be, and I thought it was going to be 3 miles, and it was actually 6 miles. So I decided to make a little map, and I've been experimenting with trying to make maps look a little bit more organic, and I've been doing that by using kind of photographs as well as maps. So this is kind of what it looks like. Kind of trying to get a watercolor-ish type of look and make the maps look just different. Sometimes things don't work out so well, but this shows actually land use relative to trails, and I was trying to work with pastels. This is mostly an Illustrator file, and so with this, so if I zoom in here, you can kind of see it's kind of a combination of hand-drawn with, hand-drawn with Illustrator kind of graphics, and then this is back to the watercolor and kind of taking just generic data and stylizing it slightly, creating more of a watercolor. But I started doing this in Photoshop, and this actually is based on OSM data. And then this, I'm wondering if my microphone is wrong. It usually works just fine, but okay. So this is a map that I did with kind of taking it into watercolor from air, kind of zoom through these, because they're kind of all using similar technique. But this was a bike ride that I did, and I'll just get through these. But really, I'm trying to get these concepts back into Illustrator, and in order to do that, I need to work faster than I would generally. And so this was back kind of a watercolor, and this is kind of on the way to Starbucks, little orthographic map, and I'm just giving you a sense for kind of what I've been experimenting with. This is a map that was the Tom Patterson's map, and thanks for letting me know about the echoes and that kind of thing. I might just be speaking into my monitors too much. And then kind of like a watercolor map of the United States, and just experimenting with brushes in my backyard. And this was a map of watersheds that surround Pennsylvania, and just kind of with a watercolor look. And just, this was actually done in Affinity Photo, because I was trying to do similar things in Photoshop. And then this was in Photoshop. But I've since kind of learned how to do similar techniques in Photoshop and Photo. And and I just wanted to give you some background for like where I'm coming from. Now, when I'm working in Illustrator, this is done 100% in Creative Cloud, and I started off with importing the data, and even though this is a raster, let me try I can try increasing the volume. Hold on. I'm gonna add a different. Let me try this, and I'm gonna go create new. I'm gonna try to use this without my microphone. Built-in microphone. Okay. And I'll turn this off. Is that better in terms of how you can hear me? Let me know. I changed microphones. So let me know if this is better. Okay. So this started off as vector, and I brought it into Photoshop, and here, I'll zoom out. Everything's going kind of slow. So I can, if I want to label this line, I can still label it, and you can see that I have my attributes, so Horsham Road, and I would use the labels, Map Label Pro, and if I want to label that, just click Label, and then I get Horsham Road. And I'm kind of covering this in a general way, but you can see what I like about this is that I can edit that Horsham Road, or let me see. Oh, good. I'm glad the voice sounds better. So I've just added, if I want to add, I'll show you my layers here. Okay, in my layers palette, I have I've created a frame, and I think it might be easiest if I show you kind of how I got to this point. So I wasn't really going to go over this quite, but I'm going to switch over to a PDF that was exported from QGIS into Illustrator, and that's not. I think this is really causing my computer to slow much faster than it was before. But Illustrator, when you import a PDF from QGIS, ends up with text that is pixel points. So you have one road. So this is the PDF from Illustrator, and I'll zoom in here. And if I select this text, you can see, I can zoom in away. You can see that this text is isolated. And so the export from QGIS to Illustrator via PDF does not work well. So I'm going to close that. Hopefully I can keep closing files. Then if I export directly from QGIS to Illustrator, and I have a SVG file, and then I can get the text. So I could select this text and create a curve and draw that curve. So I'm still redrawing the curve. This is coming in from QGIS. And the reason I'm going over this now is just to show you that the text is much easier when you're working in Mapublisher than it is when you're working directly from QGIS. And I think I just deleted all of the text. But another aspect of this is that you can see that this is one layer exported from the map from QGIS, but it's also giving me kind of sublayers. And that's going to be, so what I would do is go to ungroup and I ungroup a couple of times. And then we can edit this. So I can just select individual lines and that kind of thing. So that's the export from SVG. So if you're using QGIS and you're going directly to Illustrator, you'll want to use SVG and not PDF. So I'm going to close out of that. And then we got back to this raster image. And before I did this raster, I can turn off the raster and turn on my other layers. And so I have a lot of sublayers here, so I'll just I create a working layer of roads. And so there's two layers of roads here that I've imported. Roads with residential, so that has all of the little roads, and then roads with just the major roads. So if I turn off the roads with residential, you'll see much less information, but I needed these roads around the park, so I used those two layers of roads. And then to stylize, I'm going to close out of this one now, or I'll close out of one of these. So if I want to stylize these roads, I use the thematic tools, and this makes it easier. I just import the themes from a different project, and from that project I can edit the theme once it comes in. So if I had roads, Charter Oak roads, I'll just double click on that. So you can see motorway trunk, and I say highway equals motorway. So this is using the OpenStreetMap nomenclature. And then visual properties. So I had a style, and that's what I would apply. So I just applied that style here. I don't think, so I just applied it. It was already applied. And so that just changed, what I just did just changed these trails and added those trails back. So I don't know if people here are used to using Mapublisher or not, but I generally have a layers panel, and then I keep my map views, and then I can, if I import some data, I don't want a shapefile. I want so if I'm importing the data from GeoJSON, say I want roads around the park, that'll create roads up there. And I'll just import that. Okay. And it'll add it to that roads with residential because it's a different projection. And it shows up right here. But then, if I just drag it up to this other projection, I get my roads around the park. And for something like this, I would just go to Path and Simplify. I know you can use Mapublishers, but that'll get rid of a lot of the points. And that just makes the file a little bit cleaner to work with. And then I would just change the stroke like that. So that's kind of how I'm using Mapublisher directly. And even the key thing is being able to import the data and stylize it quickly. And using the map themes, theme tools. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to show. And since I make a lot of bicycle maps, I wanted to, I need to create like abbreviations for like road and those kinds of things. So if I had roads with, let me just select a road here. So, no. So I need to lock this mask. Okay, road. I'll just bring this up. Roads with residential. And see how this says Bristol Road, but maybe I don't want those Bristol roads to say road. I want it to say Bristol RD. So I could take this and edit the schema and create a new attribute and call it label. And this will be a string, and I'll derive from expression. And I need, let me see if I've got it in my library. Close. I don't have it here, but what I want to do is open recent. I have a case statement. So this is saying if name is street, then substitute that name with st. And so I'll copy that and then paste this into my field here. And okay, so now we have this label. And now it says, instead of Bristol Road, it says Bristol RD. And I could change my labeling from the source from, cancel. I'll change this from name to label. And I don't have something saved, but I'll just save that. So now, if I took, let me find this line, and I'll label this line. Label. Well, it gave me, it was too short, but you can see how that worked for labeling it with RD. And next I'm going to, so this just gives you a sense for how things were working in Illustrator. One of the things that I could do is export everything, like all of the base layers. So I would take everything below, here, I'll turn this on. So these are, I had this place PSD. So if I export everything now to Photoshop, then I can work with it in Photoshop and bring it back in. Let me just open. And I think I had PF Photoshop. Okay, that's why. So in Photoshop, what I'll do is basically start with, let me do this group. So I start with that exported layer. And then I'll add a blur to it. That's a smart blur. And then I'll create another layer that's a pencil. So, and this pencil should be multiply. So it's 11%, but I could make that much darker. But it just gives it kind of a sense that it was, you know, more of a pencil-ish color. And then I'll duplicate this layer. Let me just do it. And I'll call it painting 2. And this I'll put up above here and go to Image, Adjustments, Invert, and then I'll change this to Color Dodge. And then I have a white area that I can print, that I can use to paint on. So I'll go with my brushes, and let's see what brush we have. We have, so watercolor texture brush. And I'm not going to do this all, but you can see I'm going to make this bigger. And I needed to create a mask for this. So I have this painting mask, and I can paint on that mask. And it gives me kind of like the watercolor effects. I'm wondering if this stream is still working, but I think it is. So if I zoom out here, and I just go with a big brush, I can kind of, you know, do those brush strokes any way I want. And then I added a color fill layer on top of that. And some watercolor paper, and I'll zoom in so you can see that. So now we're getting this look, and then we can redo that initial layer, copy it, and apply the watercolor filter to it. And if we want to, and this watercolor filter would be like, I have it as darker color, but you could do like color or luminosity or something down here. And that will give you this kind of look to it. And then I just export this. I flatten this, I create a group and flatten it and export it back into, place it back into Illustrator above these lines. So I'm back in Illustrator now, and this is, I place it back right here, this placed PSD. And okay, so I'm going to close out of this and don't save. I have this something ship map, but don't save. And then come over to InDesign, and then I just place, it's so easy to place the maps into InDesign and update it. So as I'm editing them, ultimately, I just right-click and edit original from InDesign. So this was just the larger scale version of what we just did. So what if you want to do all of the same stuff in QGIS? I'm going to quit Illustrator now and quit Photoshop and InDesign, and then try doing the same, pretty much the same thing in QGIS. Don't save. I'm not seeing any of the live chat, so I don't know if that is still going. Oh, so that out of this. So the data that I used came from here. This is Overpass Turbo, and I load the data, select roads or swimming pools or whatever from here. And this is different than I would do it in QGIS, but it's kind of similar. So I'm going to close out of this. And we're going to come over to QGIS. And while that's loading, I'm going to that's loading. QGIS is loading. And we're going to do a new from template. And I start with templates that have page layouts. It just makes it easier. Okay. And so now we want that same data. Here's the data that we had that we imported into Illustrator. And I'll just leave that here. and then I'm going to get my data for the QGIS. So I have this called, it's a geo package. And a geo package is great because it saves everything. So I'm going to drag this geo package onto the map, select all, and click OK. Not sure why that didn't work, but I'm just going to load the geo package. This is showing that it has information. Okay, so we can pretend that I just dragged all of the information from that geo package, piece GPG, this geo package, onto the map. And we would have gotten the same information, only the layers would have been in a different order. And it automatically styles. So I could turn off, I have a couple different kinds of routes. So we could start with this, the vector data. Sorry, it's jumping all over the place. I'm going to I'll work at 150,000 scale because that's what we're dealing with once we print it out. And it looks like everything's all styled. And that's because I have style sheets that are set up that are automatically applied to the data once it comes in. So if I imported a new data set from OSM, it would match this same style. And then I'm going to see if I have any map views. So I have two map views, a locator map and the map. So if I click on locator map, I just want to go to locator map and zoom out. So this is going to be, this is Pennsylvania. And you can see that's our focal area. So I have that map, and also in map views I have this map. And we can zoom to there. And then I keep layouts. I create lots of layouts here. So I'm going to use the 5x8 layout. And for each layout, I try to do this, talk about what, I give myself some guides about what the layout is. And here we have, click on, this is map 1, this little inset, and this is map 2. And I need to turn off the layers for the root symbols. So this root, here, I'll just turn this off. So this little box here is based on an overview map. So I have this overview 1 that uses map 2, this rectangle, as the location that will show up in this overview map. So it's nice because you can have multiple projections on the same page. And then you can just export this. So I just export that, and I always save vectors. And you can see that this, before I export this, I want to show you that this Doylestown bypass text is curved. And the way that's curved is, rather than using the label, I manually labeled this. So I have this labels layer. And I should use this and lock it and zoom. So this Doylestown bypass has, it's on a line. So if I select that, sorry. You can't really, there's a yellow line here, which is the line, and I'm just going to edit this so you can see those lines. So these are all of my manually labeled layers, and I've just made them purple so that you can see that. But this is, I want to do as little editing as possible in Affinity Designer, which is why I do so much in QGIS. So then we come back over here and I export it, and I'm just going to quit out of this now because I've already saved it. And we'll go over to Affinity Designer. And this is kind of like Illustrator. So we bring the map in, and here the text has been exported as curves. So this is showing that this Pennsylvania is broken up into segments, kind of like it is in Illustrator. So actually, this is from Illustrator. No, this is just curved. This is curved. Up here I have curved. And so I'll close that and go to, this is when it comes in straight. So when it's straight, you can edit this. And so if I click on T, I can edit that. And what's interesting about this is, see how there's a little plus? This plus will let me curve, and when I mouse over the actual text, it will let me edit the text. Yeah, I'm really sorry about the slow streaming because I'm not used to having that happen. So if I want to redraw this, I could copy that Pennsylvania, and here I'll just use the pen tool, and I can draw that line, and then grab this line and kind of set the curve the way I want it, and copy the Pennsylvania Turnpike and paste it back in on that line. I pasted it. I need to just delete it first.
Now, here. So this is there. So now I can just use my text tool and click on the line. Wrong line. And then drag it. Yeah, it's going slow for me too when I'm trying to work on this. But hopefully you get the idea that you can still do your curves. If I do my pen tool, I can do the pen, and I can click on the text tool and paste that in. I'm going to close this, but I want to show you the layers first. The layers in Affinity, I think, are really hard to deal with. So you get these groups, and groups are kind of like layers. It's just like similar stuff. But if I want to change, if I want to select all of a group, I can just select that group and go select all, and it will select that specific, everything that's related to that group. And it'll be easier for me when I'm not working with a map. So this is, if you look at the layers here, I'll bring the layers over. And here we have, I want to show you, like here we have a box, and when I mouse over it, because of where it's located in this layer, I have a group and I have layers. Actually, everything's kind of a layer. And if I take this, I have this like pencil-like aspect, and I want to put that into, I can drag it into that rectangle, and now it's in this little rectangle. And if I want to take this and put it into the ellipse, I just drag it into the ellipse. So it definitely works, it's definitely causing, like, it masks differently. And when I draw, like, so I'll change the fill of this to red, and then everything has an appearance. So right now this is underneath that rectangle, but I can drag this up above, and I could do, like, duplicate this. So now I have two, and I'll add a stroke to this. So we have a stroke, and here's what they have. And I like this aspect. So instead, like, you can take this, and it has called the opacity option has erase. So this is like Daniel Huffman's version of text with a mask. So if I did want to do text with a mask, I'll bring this up. I'll put it over here. Um, wait, I didn't type. That's it. So, and I'll just duplicate this with Command J. So I have two texts, and this one's going to have a stroke. So I'll give it like a bigger stroke. And then do erase. And you can see how that erase over multiple colors. So I kind of like this aspect of it. Things that I find just incredibly frustrating so far are the selection tools. If you look at the top, you see select all and deselect and invert and select max and select. These just don't compare to Illustrator's selection tools that I'm so used to using. So if I want to like draw a line, and I try to use like the in Illustrator, I would use the eyedropper tool and click here and try to get I could get the color, but I wouldn't necessarily get this stroke. So if you're dealing with strokes, you kind of need to change styles and save styles for everything. And then you can use your pen tool. So it'll keep working with that same pen tool. But if I have this and I want to change that style, really I need to use one of my styles over here. And this is something that I have to get used to. I'm hoping that at some point in Affinity they'll actually add the style, like make it so that you can select same fill or same stroke or those kinds of things. But one last thing is there have been talks about like using different kinds of backgrounds, and you can see this background here. But say I wanted to add, I had this basically yellow thing, and I wanted to add a bird to it or something. You can, or paper. Let me just do paper. So I'll just take this paper and drag it here. And it comes in, I just need to drag it underneath and inside that yellow, I think. I'm messing up the paper. Let me undo. I'm still learning Affinity Designer, so I get a little bit confused with the whole layers thing and how that works. But we can maybe take this and well, there's a way to do it, and it shouldn't be. I did it here with this one, with this graphic. So this pixel layer right here is basically like that. So I think if I just created a new layer, well, I have this pixel layer, so if I just drag that into here, so now it's on top of that yellow. I could go, now it's inside of that yellow. I'm not sure why this other layer that I added didn't do that, but okay, so if I open, oh, yeah. So I just made this little orthographic map and say I wanted paper for this. So you see how all of these curves, I find these curves very difficult to manage. But I'm going to try to deal with it anyway. So I'm going to create a new layer. And there are two different kinds of layers. One is the raster layer, and one is the vector layer. So I'll do command, where did I go? I lost what I was doing. So I'm going to select this base layer, and I think I'm selecting it, and find in layers panel. And so it went to the very bottom almost of the layers panel. And now I'm going to drag this in, and that went probably to that here. Sorry. If I do a new layer, and drag this in, and maybe drag this beneath. This image is actually vector, so yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I should be able to figure it out. So now that that's in there, I can still, you can see all of the different textures that this could possibly produce without having to actually select it. So anyway, on that note, if you have questions, feel free to email me, and I appreciate you watching my comparison. I'm still getting used to learning Affinity Designer. It's really pretty difficult, but for me, using coming from Illustrator. But I'm hoping to incorporate this into some of my, into some of my maps. One last thing I want to say though is that the file type. So if I just save this as